So, this is session 5. Finally get to dinosaurs in the Bible. So, funny story, the first 2 times I did this was like the first or second week I did dinosaurs in the Bible, and then nobody would come back for the rest of the weeks. So I moved it to the end, so you have to come to hear all of it. We had a question last week about giants, and did it always just mean, tall people? And it kind of goes in line because we were talking about words changing meaning over time. So I looked at a couple things, and actually giants had more of a connotation in the Old Testament of more than just, someone super tall. There's a whole theory that the Hebrew word for that speaks to the disembodied ones. They were demons. So it was always a connotation of evil and demonic. So it wasn't just someone that was super tall. It was actually the personification of evil in a huge created being. So that was a great question. Is giants just mean someone big? Back then, no, it did not. So that answers that. And now for this week, dinosaurs in the Bible. So dinosaurs was the term was coined in 1841, and it kind of makes you wonder, what if everything we've been taught about dinosaurs, maybe we need to reconsider history, reconsider what we've been taught, because I think you'll find out tonight that a lot of it has been wrong. So we'll explore, did the Bible actually describe dinosaurs, and could humans have actually walked the earth at the same time with these creatures? Now, evolutionists like to point out that the word dinosaur never appears in the Bible, so how can it be historically accurate? And they are correct. How could anything describing the history of the earth not include dinosaurs? And the Bible does not say anything about dinosaurs. But it's interesting to note as we read it that it goes into ancient people, it goes into ancient places, ancient cities, how the planet got started, how the universe got started. So why leave out these huge ancient animals that were very big and very easy to see? And so evolutionists have always picked on the Bible about that. They couldn't even mention the dinosaurs. So the term dinosaur wasn't coined until the mid-1800s, and it means terrible lizard. So that was a term coined by Western people to explain these fossils they were finding. And they said it was a terrible, great lizard, so they called it dinosaur. So if the Bible did talk about dinosaurs, what term did it use? Well, it definitely wasn't dinosaur, because as we just saw, it was in the mid-1800s, right? So it had to use a different term. In the Old Testament, the word Tassin appears 15 times, and a lot of modern English translations translates it to monster, serpent, or jackal. So Tassin could refer, at least in some instances that we see in the Bible, it could refer to large reptiles or dinosaurs. Now, while in the King James Version, the word dragon is used, and it refers to reptiles and dinosaurs when not referring directly to Satan. So what you'll mostly find in our Bibles is dragon. So the Bible also refers to the largest land animal ever created and the largest sea creature ever created by name in the book of Job. Now, we're going to read some of these passages, and just remember, Job is, they believe, the earliest book in the Bible to be written. So it goes back the furthest in time. And these creatures were being described long before Western science knew of them, right? So there are thousands of accounts, thousands and thousands of accounts across the world of people seeing and killing dragons. Now we're going to look at dinosaurs throughout man's history. And we're going to see, just by calling it a different name does not mean they weren't mentioned. They were throughout our history. Dragons, just the word dragon is mentioned in the Bible 35 times. Deuteronomy 32:33 says, their wine is the poison of dragons. Psalm 74:13 says, thou breakest the heads of the dragons in the waters. So there were dragons on land and there were dragons in the waters. So these are huge creatures both on land and in the water. So let's start with dinosaurs that God actually gave a name to in the Bible. So in the book of Job, we get to this part where Job had been questioning God, and then God finally turns around and starts questioning Job. God asked Job 84 questions, and Job never answered a single one of them. But then God gets to the dinosaurs, and he's still talking to Job. And he says in Job 14:15, behold now behemoth, which I made with thee, he eats grass as an ox. So we see a couple of things in this verse. One, he names this creature. Two, he says, which I made with thee. So Job knew who he was talking about. God is talking about a creature that was around the same time as Job. So that means men and dinosaurs were created at the same time and lived together. Now, and what you have to, does anyone have their Bible with them? Go to that verse, Job 40:15. Alex, and tell me, does it have an asterisk or a little explanation out beside it? And what does that, Clint, do you have the mic? Let him read that explanation out beside it.
Yeah, I think so. Oh, well. Maybe right there. Oh, yeah, down there. Yeah.
Yeah, it says a powerful animal, possibly a hippopotamus.
Possibly a hippopotamus. So a lot of them will say hippo, a lot of them will say elephant. Once again, this is man trying to coincide what God says and push it into what science says. And here's how they do it. Science says man and dinosaur did not live together. The Bible is clearly talking about a dinosaur. But man says, well, wait a minute. Science tells us that man and dinosaur didn't live together. So let's say this is a hippo or an elephant. In that way, we don't look like fools, and we can say the Bible coincides with science. Okay? Well, it was neither an elephant or a hippo. How do I know this? Well, first of all, they had names, and they were called elephants and hippos. And God would have said, Job, behold the hippo, which I made with thee. He didn't say that. They knew what a hippo was. They knew what an elephant was. He specifically called him behemoth. And then let's look at the description, and let's just see if it fits for an elephant or hippopotamus. So Job 40:16 says, lo, now his strength is in his loins, and the force is in the navel of his belly. He moves his tail like a cedar. The sinews of his stones are wrapped together. So the tail is like a cedar tree. Now the cedar, Lebanon is known for their cedar trees. As a matter of fact, that's on their flag as a huge cedar tree because they're very straight and tall and strong. Have you seen a hippo's tail? I mean, it's like a flap of skin, right? I mean, a hippo's tail is like some of these things that I get on my arm sometimes that I have to get off. There's not much to it. So it's, yeah, Trey, you're old, you get them too. It's not a hippo just by the tail. An elephant's tail is basically what, a glorified fly swatter? It is not a huge cedar tree. The tail of this thing was big. It was long. It was stout. It was like a cedar tree. In 40:18, it says his bones are as strong pieces of brass. They're like bars of iron. So he had huge, strong bones. Verse 19 calls him the chief of the ways of God. What that means is this creature was the largest creature that God ever made. He was chief of the ways of God. That's not an elephant nor a hippo. That more aptly describes a brontosaurus or a brachiosaurus. That is the largest creature to ever walk the earth. Verse 21 says, he lies under the shady trees, in the covert of the tree and the fens. Behold, he drinketh up a river, and hasteneth not. He trusteth that he can draw up Jordan into his mouth. He takes it in with his eyes, and his nose pierces through snares. What this verse is saying is that this creature pretty much stays in the water underneath the huge trees of the swamps. That's what a fen is. F-E-N is another word for swamp. He's so big he could drink up a river and it wouldn't slow him down a bit. And just his nose could pierce through the snares set for him. They are describing something that is huge. Now, the hippo does like to stay in the water, but the elephant doesn't. The elephant mostly stays on dry land. But when the hippo's in the water, you don't see him because he sinks down to the bottom. He's not something you'd be walking by and see sitting in the fens underneath the big shade trees. Now, notice also, when God is talking to Job and asking him these questions and telling him about these creatures, Job doesn't question what God's talking about. If God were talking to me and said, a snuffleupagus, and I'd never watched Sesame Street, I would not know what God was talking about. And I'd say, well, what is that? God is mentioning things. Job knows exactly what he's talking about. Why would he, if he were trying to make a point, talk about a creature that had died millions of years ago that Job had no idea what he was talking about? Also in Job, you get to chapter 41. The whole chapter talks about another dinosaur called Leviathan. Now, Leviathan was a huge sea creature. Verse 1 through 7 tells us, can you draw out Leviathan with a hook, or his tongue with the cord which you let down? Can you put a hook into his nose, or bore his jaw through with a thorn? Will he make many supplications unto thee? Will he speak soft words unto thee? Will he make a covenant with thee? Will you take him for a servant forever? Will you play with him as with a bird? Or will you bind him for your maidens? Shall the companions make a banquet of him? Shall they part him out among the merchants? Can you fill his skin with barbed irons, or his head with fish spears? So this thing is so big, you're not fishing for it. You're not going to catch it on a line. You're not going to catch it with the hook. One of the hooks they're talking about is one of the big hooks you see that they do like this and pull up fish. You can't even get that into them. It's got a bad temper, and it will not speak soft words to you. You can't make it a plaything for your children. He's got a super bad temper. Now, some of the largest creatures right now on earth, we do these very things to, right? Whales, we make playthings out of them. We have shows around them. Anybody ever see Free Willy? It's about a whale. You had to free him because he was captive. This thing you couldn't catch. You couldn't make some type of pet out of it. It tells us you can't even catch it by filling its skin with barbed irons or its head with spears. It was something big and something nasty in the water. Verse 10 says he's so fierce that no one dares to stir him up. We know he's not a whale because in 15 through 17 it says, his scales are his pride, shut up together as with the close seal. One is so near to another that no air can come between them. They are joined one to another, they stick together, they cannot be sundered. So whales don't have scales. This isn't a whale, it's a sea serpent, or in today's world, a sea dinosaur. Now, someone will probably come up afterwards and say, you know, dinosaur is actually only land animals. I know that. But just for the sake of conversation, it's a sea dinosaur. It's a sea creature that is super, super big and super, super mean. Also, Job knew once again what God was talking about. He didn't question him. We also see an example of fire breathing. Verse 19 to 21 tells us, out of his mouth go burning lamps, and sparks of fire leap out. Out of his nostrils goes smoke, as out of a seething pot or cauldron. His breath kindles coals, and a flame goes out of his mouth. We see that it was very hard to kill. Verse 25 says, when he raised up himself, the mighty are afraid. By reason of breakings they purify themselves. The sword of him that layeth at him cannot hold, the spear, the dart, nor the harbison. He esteemeth iron as straw, and brass as rotten wood. The arrow cannot make him flee. Sling stones are turned with him into stubble. Darts are counted as stubble. He laughs at the shaking of a spear. So right here, we have two dinosaurs, and it's worth noting that God spoke of the biggest on land and the biggest in the sea. Also, you'll have in your Bible where they made a little asterisk for behemoth, they make a little asterisk for Leviathan. And what do you think they call it? A what? Crocodile, alligator. This thing does not sound like a crocodile. This thing sounds a lot worse than a crocodile. We catch crocodiles. Even the man-eaters, the 20-footers in India, we catch them. This thing is big. So we see those two dinosaurs. There's one more dinosaur mentioned in the Bible. And there's 9 verses that talk about this one. In Hebrew, it's translated as kin to a wild bull, but it's not a wild bull. In the verses that talk about it, we see that it's mean and it's untamable. This one in Job 39:9 says, will the unicorn be willing to serve thee or abide by their crib? Did y'all know the Bible talked about unicorns? No. Talks about unicorns. This is not the My Little Pink Pony with the horn out of its head. How that got transferred onto that, I have no idea. But that's what we think of when we say unicorn now, right? Like that shirt Trey wears a lot of times. But that is not what the Bible talks about as a unicorn. Here's why it's more than just a bull. The word bull in Hebrew is shor, which means a bull, cow, or ox. The word for the unicorn is ram, which separates it from just a regular bull. So it's probably larger than a large bull, in the same size frame, but larger than a large bull. We see that you can't get a unicorn to serve you or live in a crib or a stall. We do that with bulls. We see that the verse has them separated and not interchangeable. Isaiah 34:7 says, and the unicorn shall come down with them, and the bullocks with the bulls. So they're two separate animals that come out of the hills. So they're maybe similar, but they're different animals. Is it a dinosaur? You can only go off of the description of it, and the description of something that we don't see anymore. So the description tells us that he had horns, he was mean, he was untamable. Deuteronomy 33:17 says his glory is like the firstling of his bullock, and his horns are like the horns of a unicorn. So for one thing, it's not a horse with one horn because it said horns. We've kind of been trained to think unicorn means one horn. That is not what it means. It has multiple horns. It has at least two that we know of. So whatever it was, it's not around. We don't see it anymore. But I believe it's describing a triceratops. When you look at the size of it, how mean it is, untamable, it has more than one horn, and it fits in the same chapters where God's talking about other dinosaurs. So don't go home tonight and say Scott said a unicorn is a triceratops. That's just what Scott believes it is. Or something else that we haven't found fossils of. But we know it was mean, we know it was big, we know it was untamable, and it had multiple horns. So the Bible does talk about a true animal called a unicorn. So those three that are named, plus the 35 times dragons are mentioned, prove the Bible talked about dinosaurs. It was just using the vernacular of those times, using the words that the people knew back then. And in the King James, it was using the words that they translated it into. So dragon meant these huge beasts. It's the same as in the 16th centuries. What did sailors call the giant squid? Does anyone know? Kraken. It's the same thing. It was a kraken then. We call it a giant squid now. Does it change what the creature is just because we call it a different name? No, it was the same thing. The other names for dinosaurs besides behemoth, leviathan, dragons, and unicorns, they were flying serpents and fiery serpents. That's also what the Bible calls them. Now, science will tell us there's no way man and dinosaurs lived at the same time. And what proof do they have? Well, the only proof they have is their flawed dating techniques. And we never really got into this much, but they use circular reasoning on their dating techniques. So they take the layers, and by the bones they find, they date the layer by the bone they find. Then they come back and they say, well, we found this bone in this layer, so it's got to be this old. Well, wait a minute. You just took a date because of the bone and put it on the layer, and now you're saying the bone's that old because that's how old it... No, you just picked a date and put it on something, and now whatever you find in that layer you say is that old. So it's flawed dating techniques. And they also say no one has ever seen a true living dinosaur. But I don't think that's true. I think people have seen dinosaurs, and I think personally people are still seeing dinosaurs. We went over some of the living fossils, and if you want to just count that, just count the crocodile and alligator. That's a living dinosaur. But I think I'm going to prove that what we think of as a dinosaur, there are still out there, and man have been with them. We have thousands upon thousands upon thousands of instances with man and dinosaurs living together. Now, you don't hear about it because it shatters the evolutionary timeline. So they can't let it be true. But when you get into it, you will see from different sources lots of instances of man and dinosaurs living together. Because if it happened just once, one time, then it disproves their entire philosophy. So they can't let it happen. Has anyone ever heard about stuff the Smithsonian loses?
Yeah.
Oh, it's incredible. If you ever want to study something, if you want to go down the rabbit hole, that's a good one. Just study what the Smithsonian has lost that has been handed over to it. Almost all of it disproves evolution and proves the Bible. So we saw earlier that the behemoth lived in the fens or the swamps. The largest swamp in the world is the Lukula swamp in Congo and Zaire. It's 49,700 square miles. It's 80% unexplored. In the 1700s, some missionaries went in and reported there were living dinosaurs in the swamp. And in 1910, New York Herald article told of some explorers who had seen an actual brontosaurus in the swamps. In 1980, and again in 1981, a doctor named Roy Mackle, he was a biologist at the University of Chicago, he led some explorers into the heart of the swamp. As they started to encounter the natives started telling them about different animals, that were in their world. One was called Mahamba, and the explorers showed them a picture of a crocodile. They said, yeah, that's Mahamba, with one small difference. Mahamba grew to 50 foot long. A 50-foot long crocodile. The largest we know about is, I think there was a 20-footer, a 22-footer in India that was a man-eater. I mean, it ate a lot of people. A 50-foot crocodile. The natives had claimed that it attacked them often, had eaten rafts and canoes and many, many people. So they knew well about Mahamba. Some have speculated it's a freshwater relic of the Mosasaurus, which was huge sea-dwelling lizard. You see one in the last couple Jurassic Park movies. But they say they were extinct by the end of the Cretaceous period. In 1971, the creature was seen by a pastor named Joseph Ellis. He estimated the length of the tail part that he could see, just the part he could see, at 10 meters. That's almost 33 feet long, and a diameter of a half to 1 meter. Just the part of the tail that he saw was the same length of his dugout, and that was out without seeing the head or the neck or the body of the creature, just the tail part. The natives also talked about another creature called Makile Momimbe. And Dr. Mackle was asking about it. They drew a stretch out in the dirt of an Apatosaurus, which is a smaller brontosaurus, basically. They even knew what its favorite plant food was. See, this was a creature that they lived with. They didn't think there was nothing strange about it. They tried to avoid it, but they knew about it because it was in their ecosystem. Dr. Mackle eventually found and photographed footprints from the animal. Makimbi Mumbe means one who stops the flow of rivers in their language. And it's a legendary water-dwelling creature of the Congo River Basin that they have said, as long as we have known them, is an actual living creature. Sounds a lot like behemoth, doesn't it? Stop the flow of the rivers, as the Bible said. In the last century, there have been about 30 expeditions to this swamp. And some have seen the creature, some haven't. But all of them report that the natives, no matter which tribe they're in, all of them know about the beast, and it's just part of their environment. They claim that the creature lives in caves dug out in the sides of the rivers. And they're nocturnal and mostly stay underwater. Dr. Mackle is a believer in evolution, but after his 2 trips to the swamp, he came back convinced dinosaurs live there. Not just from his interaction with the tribes and the natives, but the actual footprints he saw and photographed. And he announced that it's amazing they survived for 75 million years. And I agree with him. That would be amazing if they survived for 75 million years. Then there was another guy named William Gibbons. He went on 4 expeditions, and he wrote a book called Makile Mumbe, The Mystery Beast of the Congo Basin. He reports that his guides in the Cameroon do not regard it as unusual, just part of nature, but they do fear it because it is very fierce and attacking hippos, elephants, and even crocodiles. He appears to be completely intolerant of any other large creature that shares the river, and it controls large stretches, especially those where his food supply is present. In 1907, Lieutenant Colonel Percy Fawcett of the British Army was sent in to mark the border between Brazil and Peru. Is anyone in here going on our Brazil mission trip? Nobody in here? Okay. Maybe they'll run into one of these things, huh? In the Beni swamps, he recorded a creature he believed to be a Diplodocus, the same type of animal seen in the Congo. In 1933, officials of the Brazil-Colombia Boundary Commission killed a 98-foot snake that was 2 feet in diameter. That's a big, big snake. Anyone see the movie Anaconda? As cheesy as it was, that's pretty cool. This snake is a lot bigger than that one in that movie. We really just can't comprehend things getting that big, right? But the Congo and on the equator, that's probably the closest we have to pre-flood temperatures and that we were talking about last week, where things can get bigger. And, there's no man interference, and these creatures are just left to grow as big as they can get. There's been sea creatures seen all over the world, and they're described just like plesiosaurs. Some have washed up on beaches, been caught by fishermen. But the problem is they disprove evolution, so you don't hear about them. They get thrown out. They get lost because they can't have anything contradict their theory of evolution. Dinosaurs or dragons have been mentioned consistently throughout history. An old science textbook, the Historia Animalium, claims that dragons were still sighted in the 1500s, though they were extremely rare and quite small by then. The Roman Cassius, who wrote the history of the Roman Empire and the Republic, this is a quote from him. One day when Regulus was fighting against Carthage, a dragon suddenly crept up and settled behind the wall of the Roman army. The Romans killed it by order of Regulus, skinned it, and sent the hide to the Senate. When the dragon's hide was measured by order of the Senate, it was 120 feet long. Now, I don't know if you know much about the Roman history, but the Roman soldiers and commanders, you did not fabricate a report because they would kill you right then. You were very truthful in your reports to the Senate. On May 13th, 1572, a scientist, Ulysses Androvidanus, wrote about killing a small dragon. It's probably a baby he encountered on a farm road in Italy. The farmer killed it by beating it over the head with his cane. The scientist took the body and had it mounted. He made sketches of it, and it looks exactly like a Tanostraphus. In 300 BC, Alexander the Great reported that his soldiers had been scared by the great dragons that lived in the caves in parts of what is now India. Why is it historians believe everything that Alexander the Great wrote and everything about his journeys, everything about his conquest, but not this? Why would he lie only on this little part? He was pretty much ruler of the world. Why would he lie about anything he did? He was given truthful accounts. He was pretty ruthless, even with his own troops, and especially with cowardice. Alexander the Great did not suffer cowardice. And so why would he tell of his troops being afraid if he did not like cowardice? Because it was a truthful account. The Greek historian and explorer Herodotus recorded small flying reptiles in Arabia and ancient Egypt that matched the small pterodactyl called I'm going to butcher this, Rhamphorhynchus. Aristotle also mentions these creatures living in Ethiopia. Herodotus wrote, quote, "There's a place in Arabia situated very near the city of Buto, to which I went on hearing of some winged serpents. When I arrived there, I saw bones and spines of serpents in such quantities as it would be impossible to describe. The form of the serpent is like that of the water snake, but he has wings without feathers and as like as possible to the wings of a bat. This was in 1850. In his third volume, he goes on to tell how these animals could sometimes be found in the Arabian spice groves. He describes their size, coloration, and reproduction. It seems like these flying serpents were infamous for hanging out in frankincense trees. When it came time to gather the tree's incense, the workers would employ smoke to drive the flying reptiles away. They knew how to deal with them. European reports of flying serpents living in Egypt persist through the 1600s. There's an Italian naturalist, his name is Prosper Alpin, and he wrote A Natural History of Egypt in the 1580s. And he describes this animal, and he describes their crest, a small piece of skin on the head, their tail being as thick as the finger, their length being as long as a palm branch, and their leaf-shaped tail, all precisely like modern fossil reproductions. It's amazing how they're describing these creatures that they couldn't have seen because they died out millions and millions of years ago. There's a French wooden image dating from the 16th century, and this is a copy of the center part of it that looks like a tetrasaur. There are two wings that clearly appear to have rib membranes rather than feathers, and there appears to be a small head crest above and slightly in front of the eyes, the distinctive tail vein, and a hint of the twin skin flap above and behind the bony crest that is exactly like fossils we find. Now, I'm going through this part pretty fast because I have a lot of different ones to show. In 1651, Johann Faber, in his book Thesaurus, presented a dragon engraving that was showing a decaying tetrasaur that he saw. In his book Natural History, around 70 AD, Pliny says, Africa produces elephants, but it is India that produces the largest elephant, as well as the dragon. The Greek military writer Claudius Aelianus wrote De Naturo Animalium around 200 AD. He said, the Phrygian history also states that dragons are born which reach 10 paces in length. That's about 30 feet. You have to remember, in 200 AD, they had names for every creature that we know of today. The same creatures that existed today. They had names for them. If they're calling something a dragon, it's something that today we do not know what it was. But yet they're calling it a dragon. So you have to extrapolate other things that they're calling dragons. Everything we see they're calling a dragon is this huge dinosaur-type creature. Otherwise, they would call it what they were. The famous explorer Marco Polo, he lived in China for 17 years, around 1271. And he wrote that the emperor raised dragons to pull the chariots in parades. In 1611, the emperor appointed the post of a royal dragon feeder. So if dragons were just a myth, why would they actually have a post of someone that feeds the dragons? He also writes in the province of Kharzan, quote, here are seen huge serpents, 10 paces in length and 10 spans in girth of the body. At the forepart near the head, they have 2 short legs, having 3 claws like those of a tiger, with eyes larger than a 4-penny loaf and very glaring. The jaws are wide enough to swallow a man. The teeth are large and sharp, and their whole appearance is so formidable that neither man nor any kind of animal can approach them without terror. Others are met with the size of a smaller size, being 8, 6, or 5 paces long. So why do historians believe everything Marco Polo wrote except this part? Why would he lie on this one part? Books even tell of Chinese families raising dragons to use their blood for medicine. and highly prizing their eggs for food. There are plenty of stories of men killing dragons. Today, we just call them all myths. But why? Gilgamesh killed a dragon in Europe. There's a Chinese legend of a famous Chinese man named Yu. After the Great Flood, there's a Chinese legend about the Great Flood. This Yu surveyed the land of China and divided it into sections. He built channels to drain the water off into the sea and help make the land livable again. And many snakes and dragons were driven from the marshlands when he created new farmlands. There's a statue of Marduk, the chief god of Babylon, dating from 600 BC. He's standing on a conquered, fire-breathing dragon. And a lot of these things we'll see, they're fire-breathing dragons, but that can't be right? It has to be a myth that they're talking about fire-breathing. Well, we have fire-breathing animals today. The Bible talks about them in Isaiah. It says, Isaiah 14:29 says, "Rejoice not thou, whole Palestina, because the rod of him that smote thee is broken. For out of the serpent's root shall come forth a cockatrice, and its fruit shall be a fiery flying serpent." Job 41:19 says, "Out of his, Leviathan's mouth, go burning lamps, and sparks of fire leap out. Out of his nostrils goes smoke, as out of a seething pot or cauldron. His breath kindles coal, and a flame goes out of his mouth." That's a fire-breathing dragon. And we have them today. When threatened, bombardier beetles spray the suspected attacker with a boiling hot mixture of caustic chemicals. What happens is the predator hears the loud pop, and then he gets burned. The toxins reach 212 degrees Fahrenheit. The bombardier beetle can even aim it in any direction he wants. He's got a little gun. He can aim it around and shoot with. And how's this for evolution? Using chambers in the abdomen, he mixes the potent chemicals and then uses a trigger, an enzyme trigger, to heat and release them. So how did he evolve that while he was running from predators? Or was he built with that already ingrained into him? That's a fire-spitting animal. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle from 793 says, this year came dreadful forewarnings over the land of Northumbrians, that's northern Britain, terrifying the people most woefully. These were immense sheets of light rushing through the air in whirlwinds, and fiery dragons flying across the firmament. You know, we found the ancient city of Babylon, or they have found it. We haven't, but it's been found. And on the ancient walls are preserved carvings of dragons and lions. Now, these were built in 600 BC. How did they know about dragons if they were only from millions and millions of years ago? Well, in 600 BC, it was only about 2,000 years since the flood. So a lot of dragons had died off, but some were still alive. And they made engravings of them on the Babylonian walls. A Roman mosaic from the 2nd century shows 2 long-necked dragons fighting. That's the first one there. In England, St. George is famous for slaying a dragon in 275 AD. Beowulf killed many dragons, and he was killed fighting a winged dragon in 583. Now, in the story, he killed Grendel the dragon by pulling off one of its little small front arms, and it bled to death. If I were making up a story about killing a dragon, he would not have small front arms. He'd have like 10 arms, and they'd be big, and they'd be reaching out. I wouldn't give this animal these little bitty arms. It kind of takes away from your victory, right? Unless it were true. There are dragon legends from countries all over the world. In 900 AD, an Irish writer told of an animal with iron nails on its tail and a head similar to a horse, and said it had thick legs and strong claws. Could that be a stegosaurus? That's the only animal I've ever heard of that had nails on its tail. The Vikings carved dragon heads on their ships. A Viking wood carving from the 11th century shows a dragon eating a man. It might be hard to see, but it's that last one there. A carved hippo tusk from the 12th century BC shows a dragon with a long neck and a long tail that looks just like a brontosaurus. There are artifacts from all over the globe that show dragons and men killing dragons, and they look just like our pictures of dinosaurs. The city of Nurluc, France, was named after the man who killed the dragon there. The dragon was described as, now remember the biblical verse we read earlier. This dragon was described as being bigger than an ox and having long, sharp, pointed horns on its head. A unicorn maybe? A dragon was said to live in the wetlands near Rome in December of 1691. This creature lived in a cave and terrorized the local population, and a sketch of the skeleton has survived in the possession of Ingenio Meyer. The most remarkable thing about the animal is the head crest and the dual piece of skin from the crest. It's just like a tetrasaur. 5 digits were clearly visible for each foot. The first shorter and offset from the rest, as is proper for the Scaphanaeus. There's a hint of a wing claw on the far wing where it curves forward. The membrane wings are in front of the legs on the vertebrae, matching fossils. The femur is also properly shown as a single bone. The tibia and fibia, are the twin lower leg bones, are visible too. And it's much too accurate to be a fabrication. They'll say, well, that's got to be fabricated. It's not, it can't be real. And the survival of the skin on it suggests it's not a fossil because it includes accurate wing features, head crest, and the ears. I said, well, he just took a fossil and made a picture of it. No, there's actual skin still left on it. Josephus, who was a Jewish historian, tells of Moses leading the Egyptian army against Nubia. And this is quote, he says, Moses prevented the enemies and took and led his army before those enemies were appraised of his attacking them. He did not march by the river, but by land. For when the ground was difficult to be passed over because of the multitude of serpents, which it produces in vast numbers, and is indeed in singular some of those productions which other countries do not breed, and yet such as are worse than others in power and mischief, and an unusual fierceness of sight, some of which ascend out of the ground unseen, and also fly into the air. So it's flying serpents. And so come upon men at unawares and do them mischief. So Moses invented a wonderful stratagem to preserve the army safe and without hurt. For he made baskets like unto arks of sedge and filled them with ibis, long-legged wading birds. He carried them along with them, which animal is the greatest enemy to these serpents imaginable, for they fly from them when they come near them. And as they fly, they are caught and devoured by them. So basically, the ibis they would take with them because they ate these little tetrasaurs. And the tetrasaurs were scared of them. So that's a whole story in Josephus' writings. There was a 17th century writer called Kirchner who tells how a nobleman wrote a true history surmising their all, for by the way, he confirmed the truth of things experienced and things truly seen by the eye. And these are his own words. Quote, on a warm night in 1619, while contemplating the serenity of the heavens, I saw a shining dragon of great size in front of Mount Pilatus, coming from the opposite side of the lake, a cave that is named Flew, moving rapidly in an agitated way, seen flying across. It was of a large size, with a long tail, a long neck, a reptile's head, and ferocious gaping jaws. As it flew, it was like iron stuck in a forge when pressed together that scatters sparks. At first, I thought it was a meteor from what I saw, but after I diligently observed it alone, I understood it was indeed a dragon from the motion of the limbs of the entire body. From the writings of a respected clergyman, in fact, a dragon truly exists in nature. It is amply established. We see throughout history, people have seen these things. They've written about them. They've drew pictures of them. And they always coincide with what we have in our fossils. Many other medieval authors describe flying creatures that glowed at night from Norway, the French Alps, all over Europe. Pliny the Elder makes mention of unusual birds that lived in the Hercynian forest of Germania, which have feathers that shine like fires at night. Various ancient authors and map makers describe luminescent nocturnal flying creatures. Beowulf, we mentioned earlier, talks about flying dragons that emit fire and reptiles blasting fire at night. We see over and over and over, we have flying creatures and they emit fire. On October 15th, 2002, a 22-year veteran Alaskan bush pilot named John Boker thought he had lost his mind as he was headed toward Manicotot. He and his passengers saw off the starboard side of the plane a gigantic winged creature soaring right past the airplane. They all got a good look and agreed that the creature strongly resembled the illustrations in books about dinosaurs and extinct animals. They swear it was not a bird, it was a living pterodactyl. People are still seeing these things today, just not as many and not quite as big. People suggested he saw a large eagle, but he insisted that's not what he saw. This is his quote. "You've got to realize the thing I saw I mistook for another Cessna coming up on me. It was big, big, big. I have seen maybe 100,000 eagles, and this is an awful lot bigger than an 8-foot wingspan. You would not want to have your children with this guy around," he was quoted as saying in the Telegraph. A witness on the ground also saw the same creature from this episode, and he said that it definitely wasn't a bird. He described it as looking just like a prehistoric pterodactyl. The biologist Phil Schiff of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service said the sighting had reached him, and he said, quote, "As far as we know, nothing with a 14-foot wingspan has been alive for the last 100,000 years or so." So I'm about to show a video. Now, I don't like to do a lot of videos because they can be manipulated. I show this one because it's been tested and it's not manipulated. It's an actual video. They don't know what it is, but it's passed the smell test. The guy just took this on his camera phone. And so we'll just watch it and see what you think. But if you'll write this down and look at it on YouTube, it says real tetrasaur spotted over Idaho, U.S. It truly is an amazing video. Let me try one more time. No, won't do it. It's amazing what it shows. It actually shows this thing flying. And, I mean, it looks like a tetrasaur. It even has the head bend down as it's flying, and you can see the crest on it. You can see its little feet. Man, I wish that would show. Anyway, YouTube, real tetrasaur spotted over Idaho, U.S. And like I said, the film's been studied. It hasn't been enhanced. It's not a fake. It's real film. Other airborne sightings of pterodactyls have been reported all over the world. In 1992, an airplane almost had a mid-air collision over the Brazilian rainforest. A U.S. anthropologist named Dr. George Biles was on the plane, and he's quoted as saying this was a classic case of a white pterodactyl with giant wingspan. Of course, I've heard the rumors for many years that these prehistoric creatures still roam the Amazon, but I was skeptical like everyone else. It wasn't an airplane. It wasn't a UFO. It was a pterodactyl. Pterodactyls have been spotted in Ethiopia, New Guinea, Venezuela, Indonesia, Africa, and many other countries. Just in the United States, they've been spotted in Alaska, California, South Carolina, Texas, Washington. They're smaller than the fossils we find, but they're still pterodactyls. They're still big, And most villagers in rural areas just call them demon bats. When we show them pictures, they always point out the pterodactyl as the animal they know. In 1856, the Illustrated London News ran a story about guys digging a railway tunnel, and as they were digging in, they disturbed a huge winged creature described as black with a long neck and sharp teeth, and its wingspan was 10 foot 7 inches. When they drew pictures of it, a naturalist immediately recognized it, and it matched known pterodactyl fossils. These things are still out there. Not only pterodactyl sightings, but plesiosaur sightings have been spotted all over the world also. Out of everything that's out there, pterodactyls and plesiosaurs are probably the two most prominent that we keep seeing over and over and over. In 1609, Samuel Champlain, who Lake Champlain is named after, reported seeing a 20-foot serpent with a horse-shaped head and body as thick as a keg. And that was the first reported sighting of Champ. In 1639, a sea serpent was observed in Cape Ann off the Massachusetts coast, and a drawing was made. And this form is unknown in the fossil record. Zoologist Carl Schulker speculated that it might have been a still-living Baleosaurus, which is a slender whale-like creature. But those have been extinct for millions of years, right? It had small fins, a flexible neck, a tail fluke, and could undulate its body vertically, unlike snakes, which go horizontally. A Roman mosaic from about 200 AD, found in Lindley Park Temple in the UK, depicts two long-necked sea dragons. It's kind of hard to see on that picture, but some fish are shown in there as well. And the dragon looks just like the web-footed Tanistrophosis. Everyone has probably heard of Nessie, right? Loch Ness Monster. Okay, and do you know the picture? It looks like an elephant trunk coming out of the water, the well-known. Okay, that one's a fake. There's a lot of other really good pictures of Nessie, but that one's actually a fake. Well, Lake Erie has its own plesiosaur. They call it Bessie, and the first sighting was 1793. It was a snake-like creature, 30 to 40 foot long. And it's been spotted over and over and over again from 1793 all the way up to recent times. They keep seeing this creature. Let's see. Two brothers saw it once when it was relaxed and stretched out up on the shore, and they said it was 50 feet long and 4 foot in circumference. So physical evidence. Do we have any physical evidence? Instead of just people saying they see these things, do we have evidence of people actually seeing them? So in Queensland, Australia, there's a plesiosaur-type creature around Lake Galilee, and they tell of this thing with long neck and large body and flippers, and they call it Yaru or Yarba, depending on which tribe it is. And it's a creature which used to inhabit the rainforest water holes in Australia. They made a painting of it. There's a painting on the wall, and it shows a plesiosaur, basically. Now, a neat thing with this, it shows an outline of the gastrointestinal tract on it. So that proves that these animals had been hunted and butchered. And it also shows in the picture, if you can see, in the intestinal tract, there's a guy sitting there. He got eaten. So this creature attacked people before. It also shows turtles, snakes, and fish, other creatures that are known swimming along with it. Then the other picture is Aboriginal cave paintings in Australia, which shows people along with what looks like a brontosaurus. Henry Rose Schoolcraft was a geologist and Indian agent, and he wrote a lot about the Sioux Indians, and he heard stories from them about this creature called the Unketi. It was like an ox, but much larger with great horns. And they described it as an immense reptile or serpent with legs like a giant scaly snake. and a notched backbone or crest like a giant saw, and a heavily spiked tail. The pictures suggest an ankylosaurus with the long body, long tail, heavy armor, and the multiple horns on its head. Indian carvings in the Grand Canyon, they show dinosaurs etched in the walls. So how did these Indians draw dinosaurs just like we know today if they died out millions and millions of years ago? In 1925, the Doney Scientific Expedition wrote about these very wall drawings and said, quote, "The fact that some prehistoric man made a pictograph of a dinosaur on the walls of this canyon upsets completely all of our theories regarding the antiquity of man. Facts are stubborn and immutable things. If theories do not square with the facts, then the theories must change. The facts remain." That, ladies and gentlemen, is how science is supposed to work. If the facts come out that dispute the theory, you change the theory. The article goes on to say about a year ago, a photograph of the dinosaur was shown to a scientist of national repute who was then specializing in dinosaurs. And he said, "It is not a dinosaur. It is impossible because we know dinosaurs were extinct 12 million years before man appeared on Earth." How do they know? It's the height of hubris to say you know that when there is no proof, and you came up with the dating for it. If that is true, and dinosaurs were extinct 12 million years before man, how is it on St. Peter's Basilica in Rome there are a number of winged dragon depictions, and several of them look just like a pterosaur? On the tomb of Bishop Richard Bell in Carlisle Cathedral, that's the third one there, there's a brass engraving of a triceratops and a sauropod. He died in 1496, way before we started finding fossils. How did they know how to draw these things on his tomb? There's a carving on a French chateau of a dinosaur. Another chateau in central France was built in the early 1500s, and it has a tapestry depicting what looks like a pterosaur fighting a lion with a baby hiding in the bushes. And then there's another one in Kircher's book, Mundus Subterraneus, and the drawing was so compelling that Peter Willeford said it had to be based on fossil finds, but it really couldn't. I mean, he has the skin drawing on it. He has the wings without feathers. So it's not from a fossil find. It's something that someone actually saw. In Kirchner's book, the character Winkelried was supposed to have killed a dragon in Switzerland during the earliest days of this particular settlement. In 1535, these are really, really cool. When the Spanish explored across Peru, they found rocks with strange creatures carved on them. These are called the Nazca burial stones, or the Inca stones. And they date from 500 BC to 500 AD. Now, some of these stones show brain surgery. It's not just dinosaurs. It shows things that there was no way these people could have known back then. They show brain surgery. They show artificial limbs being attached. And about 500 of these stones show dinosaurs. Not just dinosaurs, but dinosaurs with people. Just about every dinosaur we know of is pictured on the stones, along with some that we don't know of, we haven't discovered yet. One of the stones shows little circles on the side of the dinosaur, and skeptics said, well, see, they have to be false. They're just coloring because dinosaurs didn't have circles on their skin. Now, if you just found bones, if you just found fossils, you could reconstruct it, right? But you wouldn't know what the skin looked right. You just have to be guessing on that. Well, guess what? In the 90s, scientists found fossilized skin, and guess what was on the skin? Little circles, just like they found on some of these depictions on the Nazca stones. Some of these humans are portrayed as having domesticated what appeared to be dinosaurs. They were using them for transportation and using them for warfare. And evolutionists first tried to dismiss these stones as forgeries, but they have a hard time with this because early Spanish reports tell that some of the stones were sent back to Spain in 1562 by their explorers. So they prove they are not of recent origin. They have all types of dinosaurs on them. More recent discoveries of fossilized dinosaurs and skin and embryos have silenced critics with what they say the skin looks like on some of these, because every time they find something, it actually points back to some of these Inca stones that were already drawn on it. At first, they were trying to disprove them because of the position of the tail and legs. They said they were fakes because the tails were sticking out while walking. In the 1960s, paleontologists were sure that dinosaurs drug their tails behind them, drug them on the ground. Now we know the paleontologists were wrong and the Inca stones were right. The tail was actually a balance mechanism, and they held them up. That's one thing that the Jurassic Park movies get right. The tails were held up in the air. They didn't drag them behind them. So along with the dinosaurs, they had animals on there that were like the monkeys, hummingbirds. So there were other animals, not just dinosaurs, that were in that area that these people actually saw. They did microscopic analysis of the patina covering the surfaces, and they can tell. Now, there are some forgeries because they sell them, to tourists. But they can tell by the patina, some are forgeries, but some of these are the real deal that were a couple thousand years ago. And then not far from the South American Nazca sites are the Mochi Indian locations. And these were in northern Peru. They lived from about 100 to 800 AD. And they have, in the Lima Museum, they have many, many artistic mediums of dinosaurs. These people were doing dinosaurs. There are vases that clearly depict dinosaurs with 3 and sometimes 4 toes. They have the dermal frills. They have dinosaurs all over burial sites. A mummy in one grave had a blanket with dinosaurs on it. And these are all from at least 2,000 years ago. Then in Mexico, they found 56,000 clay figurines of different dinosaurs. In 1945, an archaeologist called Julsrud discovered clay figures buried at the foot of the El Toro Mountains, just outside of Acambaro, Mexico. And they were eventually dated to 800 BC to 200 AD. Now, the authenticity has been disputed only because this huge collection included dinosaurs. All of these clay figurines were in his collection. And the University of Pennsylvania tested them, and the Mexican government tested them, and all of them date them back to that time period, 800 BC to 200 AD. The dinosaurs are in very different active poses, which fit well with what we now know dinosaurs actually look like. Dr. Ivan T. Sanderson was amazed in 1955 when he found an accurate representation of a Brachiosaurus. The thing with the Brachiosaurus in 1955, the public hardly knew about it at all. It had just been discovered. So he said it was a perfect representation, and this was only known from East Africa and North America. So these people, even if it had been fake, how did they know about it when it had just been discovered by the scientific community? There's also an iguanodon dinosaur figure, and this was one of the first dinosaur skeletons discovered. There's a representation of a plesiosaur and also of a warrior riding a triceratops. In Egypt is a mosaic. It's called the Nile Mosaic of Palestrina. And it's dated, where is it at? It doesn't have the date, but it shows the Nile scenes from Egypt all the way to Ethiopia. And it shows African animals being hunted by warriors. The Ethiopians are pursuing, in one section of it, what appears to be a dinosaur. And the name on it is literally translated to crocodile leopard. And it shows all other known animals from the area, from crocodiles and plants and hippos and everything else. There's Mayan relief structure with reptilian characteristics in Veracruz, Mexico. And there's a lot of these, especially in the Mexico and South American region, that show different dinosaur-type heads. In Cambodia, there's lots of temples, and one is the Tai Prom, which it has stone statues and reliefs, and almost the whole thing has different carvings on it, and it shows monkeys, deer, water buffalo, parrots, lizards. But they also have this one, which is a very clear carving of a stegosaurus. And this is an 800-year-old Buddhist temple. How did they know about the stegosaurus to do a carving that is so lifelike to what we know it looks like? The Chinese calendar or zodiac has 12 animals on it. 11 of them are still alive. The 12th is a dragon. Why would they use 11 real creatures and one mythical? Why would they not use 12 real creatures? These are some pots, Chinese pottery pots, and there's one that looks, the second slide, it has little sauropods climbing up on it. How would they know what a sauropod looks like if they hadn't seen it for themselves? There's an oviraptor, that's a jade carving there. And then there's the pot is from Moundville, Alabama, and it shows a tetrasaur clearly on the pot that they dug up. And it's dated around the 1300s. There's an urn from Caria, which was in Turkey, and it's from 530 BC, and it shows a bunch of different sea creatures, but it also shows a mosasaurus on it. In 1971, there was a landslide in Italy, and it exposed hundreds of artifacts from a pre-Greek civilization. Now, there was a terracotta statue there that looks like a stegosaurus. It had broken pottery with the stegosaurus on it. It also showed it the little short, stubby legs on it. It's amazing how they got it so right if they'd never seen it before. The cylinder seal of Uruk shows an Apatosaurus on it, long-necked dinosaur. The legs and feet clearly fit the sauropods that there had no way of knowing about it. The normal palette, which dates to 3100 BC, shows the triumph of King Narmer with long-necked dragons that appear to be in captivity. So we're going to stop here. Well, actually, we still have some more, but we'll finish this one up next week and then close it out. But on this, do we have any questions, comments, observations? Go.
I have not formed the question yet. I'm just thinking of all the
Okay,
strange-
she's forming her question, so it's going to be a long one. So if you have a question, get it in now before we hand her the mic. Anybody? Oh, come on, this is dinosaurs.
Were there dinosaurs on the ark?
Good question. Were there dinosaurs on the ark is what he asked. Yeah. I mean, so here's what happened when dinosaurs got off the ark. And I used to have a little section on this, and it's just kind of fallen out as I added new stuff. First of all, God sent the animals to Noah, right? So I think God was wise enough to send younger, smaller animals for several reasons. One, they would live longer. They would have more time to produce. But also on the ark, in stormy weather, younger animals will tend to hibernate and cower down. and they won't be as active. Also, you won't prime childbirthing years, so you're not going to send old ones on. You're going to send younger ones so they have much more time to reproduce. When they came off of the ark, of course, everything didn't grow as big. We lost our canopy, right? The earth was vastly, vastly different. A lot of the vegetation had been destroyed by the flood, and man and animal were now eating meat. So, when the families of Noah came off the ark, probably one of the first things they did was start killing some of the bigger stuff, right? Start eating meat. And we have a lot of them shrunk in size. A lot of them just went extinct then, the ones that were left. A lot of their air pressure was different. They couldn't get as big. They couldn't run as far. They couldn't live as long. So, yeah, dinosaurs were on the ark. A lot of species. That was probably the great extinction period, because a lot of them, when they came off, they didn't get as big. They got eaten. They just didn't survive. So, yeah, dinosaurs were on the ark. Anybody else?
Yes, my question is, if I were wanting to look up some of the information that you've shown us tonight, where would I find it?
We still have some of the resource pages in the back. A lot of it was, how many years have we been doing this? 15 or so. A lot of it was just searching through books. You can, it's probably a lot easier nowadays. You can just Google some of this stuff and go to different articles about it. That's the easiest way to get to it. Back when I started this, I was having to sift through books and different periodicals and different science magazines. It's a lot easier today. So, yeah, that's how.
I was just wondering if you were going to show a picture of that sea creature they pulled out, the Japanese fishermen.
Yeah,
pulled
it's
it
going to
out
be
of-
next week, but I'll give you a sneak peek of it. There we go. The first one's a fishing boat off of New Zealand. There's one in Mexico. So there's lots of different ones we still have to go through. But yeah, we'll get into that next week.
What's your favorite dinosaur?
My favorite? I don't know. T-Rexes are pretty cool. I don't know. I always kind of like Triceratops. Or unicorn, as we'll call them now.
You got a question here? All right.
I got the mic back. Yes.
Clint, we talked about
So
this.
anyhow, in trying to put myself or ourselves back in a historical context of living with these creatures as a parent or as a grandparent, you wouldn't want to just tell your children or grandchildren to go outside and play if there's meat-eating dinosaurs roaming around. And while we've seen artifacts that have had examples of them eating humans, I would wonder if there would be historical stories possibly written out there where people have lost children or grandchildren to these dinosaurs that we as Christians believe very possibly lived with them. Because I tell you what, I would second guess myself being like, oh, let's go down to the creek and, or go to the lake and play. And, you just never know what might be out roaming around. And, back thousands of years ago, I would have to think that many humans were lost to these animals, but it would be interesting if there were stories about that.
Yeah, that's a great point. Actually, in a lot of these stories of dinosaurs or beasts that they don't particularly name, it tells about them terrorizing local villages. And first thing we do, like we talked about last week, as humans, we go kill the biggest thing out there, either for food, for protection, bragging rights, whatever. You know, we're going to kill it. But along those same lines, who here has been to the beach and gone out in the ocean? Well, why? Don't you know there's sharks out there that kill people? Have you seen videos of the sharks come up on the sand? Yeah, watch it. So we still do that with creatures we know are out there that's going to kill us, but we still do it. So it's kind of the same. It was just part of their environment. You know, same way. Who knows what what animal kills the most people out of everything out there? Hippopotamus. Every year, hippos still kill people. It's one of the most dangerous animals out there. But it still happens because it's part of the environment. And if you live there, you just have to be aware. And sometimes it's going to get you, and sometimes you're going to outrun it. It's just what happens. Now, they're protected now, but not too long ago, really, just in the last century, if something was killing your crops or your cattle or your kids, you'd go out and kill it. That's just what you did. So, yeah, there are stories of things terrorizing local villages. And, well, that's why St. George killed the dragon, because it had killed children and people in the village. So, yeah, there are stories about it killing people. Dinos killing people.
The fire-breathing ones, they save the princesses. You know those stories, all right? There was some evidence, I believe, that was probably written about that when they wrote it down. But I think just like the homework, the dog ate it. Well, in that case, the dinosaur ate that too. Just saying.
But that is a good question. The thing is, now when we see or hear these stories, we say those are myths or they're legends. We don't put any stock into it. But all of those myths and legends came from somewhere, came from truth. And a lot of them were true stories. We just end up calling them myths or legends because we don't see the things anymore. Who's next?
I think on the Congo comments, with the 98-foot long snake that is 4 foot wide or whatever that is. It was already mentioned, but just to add on to it, about if that's our best example on land in modern times of a highly pressurized environment that's able to grow those large bugs and animals and all the things, it's still pales in comparison probably to the amount of oxygen and the pressure of the ancient world. So it's kind of easy to imagine what the extreme size and power of both people and animals, right, in the ancient days. So
yeah, that's just a small controlled environment because there's not a lot of man invading on that area. And plus it does have the year-round temperature that it needs. Things do get bigger. So yeah, it's a great example of why you can still find that type of thing in there. Alex?
Are we going to talk about Bigfoot in the Bible?
Is Bigfoot in the Bible? Is it? Well, hold on. Where's he at?
I think he is. I think it's a thing. I'm just curious if you were even going to bring that up at all in this.
Since you asked. If you need to go get kids, go get your kids. So this is Scott here, okay? Let's start with what we know. There was a creature called Gigantopithecus that we found skeletons of. This thing was 8 to 12 foot tall, and it's a giant ape that walked on its hind legs. That's a Bigfoot, right? Okay, but scientists call it Gigantopithecus. They say it lived millions of years ago. So here's the problem. If you believe the earth is not that old, let's say 10,000 years, which going off the Bible, I believe is somewhere close to that. then that thing hasn't probably truly died out. It might have gotten a little smaller, just like everything else we're talking about. And they say it came across the land bridge, of course, like because Gigantopithecus bones are found in China. So if you're asking me, and the other part about the Bible mentions in the end times these creatures coming out of the earth that we have not seen. Go study it. It's kind of freaky. But we're starting to see, or you're starting to hear reports of lots of creatures we've never seen before. And I personally believe we're getting near the end times. So put 2 and 2 together, and you get a big old hairy 4, right? So do I believe in Bigfoot? Yeah. I mean, we have proof in Gigantopithecus. Do I believe every picture and you see is Bigfoot? No. I believe a vast majority of them are fakes. The only way I can connect it to the Bible is the end time stuff where creatures are going to come out that we have never seen before. Unless you have some other verse you're thinking about. Oh, okay. And some of our neighbors in the summer when BJ has to shave me down outside claim they have seen Bigfoot. Next.
How can scientists say that anything's really extinct with how much is unexplored?
You know, that's a great question. And that's some of the stuff we went over earlier. They said the coelacanth was extinct. We have them. They've said all these things are extinct that keep popping up. So how can you say really anything is extinct? Another good example, just here recently, have anyone heard of the Tamir tiger in New Zealand? So it's this little striped creature, about the size of a coyote maybe, and it's a tiger, and they call it the Tamil tiger. Been extinct for 50, 60, 80 years, something like that. They caught some on trail cams. It's not extinct. They don't know it's extinct. The dodo bird, they say, but Tina, don't laugh at the dodo. They say the dodo is extinct. I can tell you, some meetings I have with people, the dodo is not extinct. It's alive and well in today's world. So, yeah, they don't know. I mean, you can say something's extinct, but you truly don't know, especially ocean creatures. Like we said a week or so ago, man, there's some funky stuff down there deep in the depths.
That's why NASA doesn't go down there anymore.
Space is more comfortable.
Yes.
Did you think of your question?
There's so much going on in my brain right now because of my background and the depths of.
Go ahead and hand her the mic, Clint.
Here we go.
She's on roll now.
Papa can hear me. Just coming from the opposite side of Christianity and having many years kind of digging into those myths, those lore, those stories, and trying to find the truth underneath it in like New Age and occult practices. There is so much that I've thought dinosaurs and dragons were the same thing for many years because of the depths that I was in on the opposite side of where I'm at now. And like we were saying earlier about like the stories of like children being captured or eaten or, you know, some crazy mythical creature terrorizing a village. It's just too common among too many ancient cultures at the same time for it to not have a root in truth. And what we're doing here through a biblical lens, there are deceptions and very significant perversions of these truths just scattered about. And now my brain is putting all of it together and seeing so many more things. And I'm kind of on overload right now. I'm like updating information, and I'm probably just going to go through your book and put where like the things that I learned that were misconstrued that actually point to the biblical truth once you get underneath all of those lies and twists and manipulations, because this is wild for me. Like, I'm having as much fun here as I was in the Holy Spirit class.
So I believe most people, when they're relating a story, I believe most people are telling truth. Now, you might, exaggerate a little bit on it, but when something happens to someone, and think back to like 1800s and back, okay, because that's where most of the lore and myths come from. When they're relating a story, I believe most people are telling the truth. And then when you have multiple people separated, different villages, telling pretty much the same story, I think you have to connect the dots and say, okay, just say a creature attacked their flocks and they saw it, and one said it was, on 4 legs and stood 6 feet high, and one said 4 legs and stood 5 feet high, and reddish fur, brown fur. Okay, you can pretty much deduce there was a creature between 4 and 6 foot tall that had fur, dark fur. I mean, you have too many stories, like you were saying, across eons of time describing the same things to say they're all liars, when most of the time they were relating a story as a warning to other people. So I think the vast majority of them are true. And seriously, we're running over. If you have to go get your kids, you can bring them back in if you want. You can just leave if you want, but we'll keep going as long as we have something going on. Who had the mic?
Kind of building off what you were saying, Scott, kind of think of the game telephone. Like, it's going to change as more people are saying it. It's going to change as time goes on because, like, everyone interprets things differently.
And there's different words and connotations and translations. Yeah. And then a lot of it, especially like the horrible things, it was a means of survival. Like, to be able to tell that story, you're not going to tell it for no reason. You're going to tell it for the survival of your community.
Right. And like I said, there's some exaggeration in, some mistelling. Sometimes you see it wrong. In what series was it? I think I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. We talked about how eyewitnesses will see something a little different. If every eyewitness saw the exact same thing, that's when detectives say, okay, they got together and fabricated this. There's going to be something a little different because people see things different, or they see a different angle or different light or what have you. BJ, did you have something? Is that from last week?
Yeah, since I missed, I bought my homework. I was out of town. So last week we talked about stratification and all those things, if you were here last week. So I was doing some landscaping and actually discovered, while we were studying all that, it really doesn't take years and years and billions of years to bury something solid in there. Because as I was doing, I saw a little thread, and I was laying a path. So I was working with stone, about 2 tons of stones. I used to be stronger, just saying. But I saw a little thread, and I kept working and pulling at it and looking. I said, there's something in this. So I started chiseling. I had all my tools and chiseled it out and found this before permanent press was ever made. And before stripes were ever made, I found a piece of fabric that was, it was in there solid. And so that's always been another evidence of time telling, of being able to tell time how things happen. It was solid, hard to chisel out rock. But it was in there, and I got it all out in one piece. So I'm sure this was a guy running from a dinosaur, and it's probably this tour. But if anybody wants to see it, it's really there. Billions of years ago, millions and millions of years ago, and there's stripes, and it's 2 different color stripes: red, white, and blue. Or it probably was white at one time. So it really wasn't that long ago that probably somebody's clothes got torn, maybe for whatever reason, and floods came and it packed and it repacked and pressure. So anyway, I wanted to bring that this week and share.
think Rick had. Did you have?
It's interesting to compare some of the proofs of evolution that have been shown to be frauds. Because people, when there's a desire to prove something for your own self-interest, somebody will find a way to do it.
Yeah.
Some of those were hidden for decades before the truth was known, like in the British Museum when they had some artifacts and they said it proved it, but then they wouldn't allow the other scientists to see it for decades because it gave the museum some prestige or something. And I think sometimes that could happen, maybe with stories that would favor Bible themes. We just have to use, like Paul says, test everything.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is amazing the evidence, especially within the last, I'd say, probably since the mid-1850s, when evolution really started kicking in. The evidence that gets lost that disproves it. And like we were talking about the Smithsonian thing, I mean, it's just a web of deceit. Anything that disproves it ends up getting lost or marred or yeah, and when we went through the cavemen, the Piltdown, the Java, Neanderthal, the outright frauds, not just, oh, hey, we got this wrong. The outright, they filed down a jawbone to fit it onto an ape. I mean, just the mechanizations to try to force evolution to be true. Well, you don't go to those steps if you have evidence. It's when you don't have evidence that you so desperately have to fabricate something. And yeah, Rick, that's how it's been. The stuff that disproves it gets lost or somehow discredited by the scientific community, and there's no proof for it, so you have to fabricate it. It's just a wicked system trying to cast dispersion on God. I mean, is what it comes down to. And that's really what it's all about. Either it's God or it isn't. And we saw the quotes from these scientists that said, well, we have no proof. Everything actually points to a creator. This, that. But that means we have to admit there's a God. And that's unthinkable. So we'll keep digging our little ditches. Anybody else? Rick.
Someone was asking about where can we find some more research on this, and I did prepare, a few weeks ago, the summary sheet there with the organizations, and some of those websites, they have collected articles from the PhDs for decades now, and you can get into a lot of scientific detail of what they think, prove different things in the Bible, and so you could go to there for some free research.
Yeah.
I brought some more books today. I'm bringing some every week. I put some in the center table there that you can just look at too, which go into more details, and they're free. If you'd like to borrow one of the bigger books, just let me know. I'll just take your name down. And
Yeah, some more books. Answers in Genesis has some great articles. And the good thing about them, they not only have great articles, they have good links to go to other articles and things. And really, when you start on the links, when you start digging, it shoots you to a lot of different places. I went down some rabbit trails that I couldn't even find again, and I missed some good articles because I just didn't print them or write them down when I had them. But you can get on there and you can run down trail after trail after trail. Anybody else? So BJ has the slip of cloth that came out of solid rock that I was talked about last week, if you want to see it. If there's nothing else, we'll close down. We're good. All right, we'll close it down. Thanks, everybody. Last one next week.